Odisha got into it. Then faculties got in. Then faculties from across the country, and now 12, 13 countries faculties are in this platform. They are interested, and we are sparingly doing some academic activities. But for last 4 months, I initially was doing a weekly event. Then I started thinking of roping in faculties from across the country, and many of my good friends, they agreed to share their wisdom and knowledge to all the participants and attendees. And in that process, this is the 17th episode that we are having. And today it's an evening for bariatric surgery. I have with me three faculties who will be sharing their expertise. Dr. Mahendra Narwaria is a good friend of mine. He is the chairman and head of bariatric surgery in Asian Bariatrics. He was the past president of Obesity and Metabolic Surgery Association of India. And in fact, he is an excellent bariatric surgeon and a robotic surgeon. The second speaker is Professor Sandeep Agarwal. He is professor of surgery in All India Institute of Medical Sciences in New Delhi. More than that, I am privileged to be working with him in the editorial board of Journal of Minimal Access Surgery, where he is the editor of this esteemed journal. And the third person is Dr. Praveen Raj, who was in fact was to moderate this evening with one of his presentation on sales sleeve gastrectomy, but with the last minute withdrawal of Dr. Om Tantia for his health reasons, I requested Praveen to present his topic, I mean Dr. Tantia's topic. Dr. Praveen Raj Palnivellu was initially, people were thinking that he was initially recognized as son of Dr. Palnivellu sir, but later on he proved himself that now Palnivellu sir is recognized by Praveen. So Praveen is a young and very dynamic and dedicated bariatric surgeon. He does exclusive bariatric surgery. He is heading the bariatric unit of GEM Hospital, Coimbatore. So, and the next week on the cards, we have liver resection tips and tricks by Chirag Desai, which will be moderated by Madhavanand Kar, head of surgical oncology of AIIMS Bhubaneswar. So this will be the next week, same time. And now, without wasting time, I am handing over the screen and air to Praveen. Praveen, please, you can please take over.
Good evening, everyone. And I think I should appreciate Professor Sahu for this initiative. I think that he's been doing since 2012. And I think using this pandemic also to spread right knowledge of academics. And I think on behalf of all of you, I think I would like to appreciate him for, and also more importantly for selecting bariatric surgery as one of the topics. Reach out to all the postgraduate students, I think, who are the major participants in this platform, because I always believe bariatric surgery needs to be very strongly into the academic curriculum of the postgraduate students, which is missing. So many times whenever postgraduates really come out, the concept of bariatric surgery being a specialty itself needs to be thrust in strongly. So on that regard, I would appreciate him, Dr. Sahu, for including bariatric surgery into the academic platform. So I think we have some great set of faculties here who will be sharing some wonderful videos. And of course, Dr. Sahu has already introduced themselves. So without wasting much time, we'll straight get into the evening. And I think to begin with, I think we'll start with Dr. Sandeep Agarwal, who will be talking to us on sleeve gastrectomy. I think that's what the order, if I'm right.
Yeah, you are right.
Maybe we can begin with Dr. Agarwal to present a video on laparoscopic sleeve gastrectomy.
Yeah, thank you, Praveen, and thank you, Professor Sahu, for this initiative and involving me in this academic activity, which I'm sure will be found useful by all those who are attending. And I'm happy to share stage with Dr. Mahendra Narwaria and Praveen, and I hope people enjoy my talk. So I'll start sharing my screen. One second. I'm a bit. 1 second. How do I go back?
Present now at the bottom.
I'm present now, and then I go to.
Yeah, then you click the entire screen.
Yeah.
Select the entire screen, then share.
Okay. Okay, then I share, but
Click on the entire screen. Yes, now it's coming.
Okay.
It's coming. Yeah.
So, can you see my screen now?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay. So thank you again. And I'll be talking about the technique of sleeve gastrectomy as we do it at AIIMS. So I have no conflict of interest with Claire. And as we are all aware that sleeve gastrectomy is the most popular surgical procedure for obese patients for weight loss. It is now currently about 60% of the procedures globally are sleeve gastrectomy, and despite a lot of shortcomings or a lot of myths about sleeve gastrectomy, it continues to show an increase in the popularity. It's essentially was started as a part of a duodenal switch operation, where 60 French bougie was inserted, and gastric tube was created along the 60 French tube, a bougie, and it used to be a part of the duodenal switch or a first stage of a two-stage operation. And this was actually among the first review on this topic when we showed that it could be a popular operation for morbid obesity. We reviewed the available literature at that time. There were only 4 or 5 articles, which are basically among super obese patients, which showed that it could be a standalone operation in the future. As I said, it started as a part of duodenal switch operation and as a first stage procedure in super obese. Then it progressed for use as high-risk patients, like in elderly patients, patient with inflammatory bowel disease like Crohn's disease, patient with repeated surgery with adhesions, end organ disease, extremes of age, like you could have adolescents patient who were sleeve was preferred, or poor intraoperative conditions. You put your scope and you find a lot of fat and a difficult liver. You could think of a sleeve. But now it's obviously a primary operation for morbid obesity, as I discussed, and there are very few contraindications, if any. There are hardly any absolute contraindications. So I'll start my video. This is the patient position we start with. Patient is in split leg position, supine on the table. Legs are split apart, and there are footboards to secure the foot, both the feet. Then we have thigh straps, which are very well padded to secure the patient to the table, and an abdominal strap. We start the pneumo by a varus, which is about 15 centimeters from the leafy sternum, not from umbilicus, but from leafy sternum we measure. And then we put our first, the varus to induce the pneumoperitoneum. And we aim at a pressure of 14, but you can use 16 to start with if the patient is really obese and you anticipate, difficulty in putting the trocar. And then this is our port position. We use this is a camera port at the the umbilical or the supraumbilical position, which is a 45-degree scope. Okay, and a long scope we use. We always use long instruments for all the cases so that we don't have to change in between. Then we have a 12 mm port in the right mid-clavicular line, a 5 mm port in the right anterior axillary line. So those are the 2 working ports for the surgeon, and this is for the port for the assistant, the 5 mm port for the mid-clavicular line. We start by putting the Nathanson retractor. We put a 5 mm port just to the left of the falciform at the inferior edge of the left lobe of liver. We dilate it a little bit, and then we put the hook of the Nathanson retractor to retract the liver. This is an excellent retractor. It's a blunt. It is very good for lifting heavy livers and avoids injuries. The next step involves creating a window in the lesser sac. So the surgeon who's standing on the right side retracts a greater curvature, and with the help of some energy source, which could be a ligature or a harmonic or an M-seal, anything is good, whatever you get comfortable with. Create a window. Take your time in creating a window. There's no hurry. Don't ask the assistant to retract too much because that can lead to bleeding. I've seen immediately the assistant retracts widely and it can lead to bleeding. So once you create a window, stick to the greater curvature of the stomach. Okay, absolutely. And you can have almost a bloodless field when you go up. So once you go up, you come close to the short gastric. Remember, the position of the patient is a steep reverse pendulum position so that you can see the upper end of the stomach very clearly and all the fat falls away by gravity. So you can see this almost a near avascular field when we go stick to the stomach inside the gastrophilic arcade. And here, when you approach the short gastric, you be a bit more careful. Maybe cook it twice, thrice, but we never use clips. We never require to use clips. And you can appreciate the inferior phrenic coming to the view and the left crust. There are some posterior adhesions which you must always take off, because that is necessary to mobilize the fundus completely. And as you can appreciate, the left crust and the top of the spleen. So that is the space we are going to enter now. Go in between. Inferior phrenic is a very good landmark. And once you are, you're there, you just stay medial to it to avoid any injury to the spleen. In this case, everything is seen very clearly. So you start dissecting medially to find out the phreno-esophageal membrane. The trick is to dissect the whole crust. It's not enough just to see the crust or the inferior phrenic, but to dissect out all the attachments and the fascia so as to expose the left crust in its entirety. That ensures two things. One is you mobilize the entire fundus of the stomach. You can see the phreno there, white phreno membrane. That is a medial landmark. So one, you mobilize all of the fundus so that nothing remains behind. Second is you also have a look at the hiatal hernia. Now this is the steep. This is the position which we are at right now when we are at the top. As you can appreciate, that's the fixator for the nasal. Now once we've done that, the assistant who's standing on the left side of the patient takes over the dissection. Again, he with gentle traction and dissection, we can almost in a very avascular fashion go towards the pylorus. Okay, taking care again, not to cause too much bleeding. Don't retract too much. There's no need. Just with gentle traction on one greater curvature and some gentle traction on momentum, one can easily dissect, close to the surface border of the stomach. And now, as we approach, we tend to stay about 4 to 5 centimeters from the pylorus. Now, there is a tendency now to go more and more towards the pylorus, but that's a separate topic in itself. General, average accepted distance of pylorus is about 3 to 5 centimeters. Now we're measuring the distance of pylorus using the open two instruments, and we ask our anesthetist colleague to put the bougie. This is a 38 French bougie, actually a gastric calibration tube used for gastric banding, which is now used by almost all the surgeons as a bougie. And we have cut off the balloon. You can see that the balloon is cut off so that nobody accidentally inflates the balloon. Now this is a bougie coming. That was the external view. And sometimes it can be very tedious and very annoying to put the bougie into the right place. So this is a bougie, again, with gentle, guiding and without causing much trauma. Just, direct it into the duodenum. We prefer to go into the duodenum because if it is in the stomach, it causes a posterior, part of stomach being left behind. So one is in place, ask the anesthesia colleague to ensure there are no more tubes. No temperature probe, no Rice tube, no orogastric tube, except the bougie, and confirm it twice, thrice, and to the point of irritating the anesthetist, but make sure there are no tubes. Now, the first fire is probably the most important stapling fire of all the stapler. Take your time, position the stapler well, reposition if you want, do a gentle traction, look at the posterior aspect that you're not leaving behind too much of stomach. Stay about 2.5 centimeters from incisura. Be a bit more liberal here. Don't go close to the incisura because there the stomach is angulating. So even the bougie is there, you might narrow it too much. So stay a bit away from incisura. Here we're using a tri-stapler, using a motorized gun, but any other stapler is good enough. It's just the technique which matters. Once you've done that, check for the proper formation of staple line. That B formation is there. There are no loose staples. The staple line looks good. Once you've done that, you can do a sequential firing of the stapler. We use a 60 mm. In this case, it's a tri-stapler, but if it is some other thing, we can use a purple or a blue, depending on the thickness of the stomach, which you will come to assess with experience. But normally, a blue or a purple blue or a gold will do if it's a tri-stapler. Again, be careful not to be very tight against the bougie. Don't be too aggressive in a sleeve. Remember that. There's no point in gaining additional 1 centimeter and causing too much of narrowing or making more prone to leak. Again, be gentle at all stages. Okay. So once you've done that, now look for any loose staple at the crotch. If there are none, then again you can go in again with a gentle traction. Make the sleeve flat. The traction by the assistant should be on the greater curvature, not anterior or posterior. If you put a traction anterior or posterior, you will have an unequal or a twist of a sleeve. And that is an extremely important point to avoid twist. Is that traction by the assistant should be on the greater curvature, not on the anterior wall or the posterior wall. Now, this is the loose staple I'm talking about. Remove the loose staples from the angle and then again go, try to go at the angle. We can always bisect the staple line if you think you need to go medially or laterally. So once you do that, you can see that it's very sequential firing. You can have a very nice sleeve. You can appreciate that we are not too tight against the sleeve, but it still looks very good. And now, again, so make sure that all the surfaces are properly spread out, and there is no unnecessary bunching of tissues. You see a little bit of stapler. Don't try to push your stapler. It causes bunching of tissues and poor staple formation. So now at the last step, here we can see the angle very clearly, but in some very difficult cases, this instrument known as Goldfinger is very handy. It helps us to define the angle. Here it's pretty straightforward. We can see the angle very clearly. We may not have required it, but in general, it's a good tool to have in the kitty. Now the last stapler, you have to be a little bit careful. Angulate it away from the angle of his. Don't angle it towards the crura. Just stay slightly away, just to the left of Belsey pad of fat. Okay, our policy is not to dissect fat unless it's too much. If there's a lot of fat at the angle of his, then dissect it. But we generally tend to leave it because it causes staple line hematoma later on and has been implicated in leaks. So once you've fired all the staplers, it has the sleeve, the bougie is withdrawn. Now, when the bougie is withdrawn, sometimes you may have bleeders which may come up. In this case, there were none, but most of the cases, the bleeders will start spurting. And you increase the blood pressure to 140 and look for bleeders. And if there are none, then go ahead for the leak test. Here, that's a leak test done using methylene blue. You distend the sleeve with 50 to 100 ml of methylene blue. You can do an air insufflation test instead. And this can be pushed through the bougie itself. There's no need to change into a Riles tube. So once you've done that, you check for any blue coming out from upper part or any other part. Upper part is where we're most scared of. So once you've done that, remove the white tail gauze, look for any color, so that we see that there is no staining of this thing. And again, also check the staple line. You may sometimes miss the color on this thing, but you can sometimes appreciate and check all throughout the staple line. Take your time in ensuring hemostasis as well as check for leak. There should be no hurry at this step. Next step is to take out the specimen, which you take out to the right side port without using a bag. Remember, if you use a bag, it needs a bigger incision. And once we've done that, we close the port with a number 1 or 10 Vicryl using an endosuture passer so as to prevent a future herniation. We do not close the other ports because we are using a non-cutting trocars there, and we haven't seen. So once you've done that, we place a drain. We can use this drain or a flat drain, Jackson Pratt drain, which is useful. And this can be again, taken out through the left side port, 5mm port, and placed just next to the sleeve. And then the Nathanson retractor is taken out under vision to ensure that there's no bleeding. Again, I check everything for bleeding because there can be unnecessary, missed bleeding. Again, the ports are withdrawn under vision. And all these steps are absolutely mandatory to do in the same way. So this is how we do the sleeve. So one second. So now just one, important thing I want to remind you that when you're doing a sleeve, always be conscious of detecting a hiatal hernia. In our own practice, we have hiatal hernias in about 1/4 of cases now, the last 2-3 years, when we have become more conscious about this entity, because all of us are aware that de novo GERD, that means instances of new onset reflux out of sleeve is about 20%. And one of the main etiological factors is missed hiatus hernia. So if I'll show you this video. This was a sleeve being done by my fellow, and I was actually standing outside watching him because he was a funny little fellow. And then I felt there was something wrong, so I had scrubbed up. So here we are dissecting again along the left side of the crura, trying to, there's a lot of fat on that region. He has already stapled almost towards the end, but this area looks very unclear. And the freno is not very clear. And here I'm trying to define the freno. And you can appreciate the upper part of the posterior fundus seems to be going in and the freno is stressed. So that's the margin of the freno membrane, which is quite stressed, not very well defined. And this is the fat which is herniated along with the posterior part of the stomach into the, mediastinum. And that's how, we have we pulled it out. And once we have pulled it out, obviously we have to dissect all of the crura, both the sides, and do a proper hiatus hernia repair. So now we are dissecting the left crus and to ensure an adequate length of esophagus into the intra-abdominal length. Dissect on the right crus, create a posterior window, and so this is the posterior window. That's the right crus margin. We create a posterior window, pass a sling. That's the esophagus. We are trying to ensure a good length by dissecting now. And so once you've done that, then we repair the posterior crura by 1 or 2 sutures of 2 or 3 sutures of Ethibond. So we complete the sleeve now. Once you dissected it, we do the leak test, because once we do the posterior repair, the bougie will not go in easily. So we complete the sleeve and repair the crura using either Ethibond. This is the endo stitch being used to repair it. You can use any other non-absorbable suture. You can use a barbed suture, or you can use a proline. So we put 2 or 3 sutures. We don't do it over a bougie, because that sort of makes it more difficult, and there's a more chance of injury. And once you do that, so we have ensured a good length of esophagus. We did a cruroplasty. We have reduced the fat and the stomach. So it does help in preventing further reflux. So just to complete my presentation, the tips is, one is adequate mobilization of fundus. That is extremely important. You must completely expose the left crus and look at the phrenoesophageal membrane. Also take off all posterior adhesions. Look very carefully for hiatal hernia. There can be just a dimple or a lax hiatus. The crura gets easily peeled off, or you cannot see the upper part. You see the fundus going up, or the fat, like in this case, going up. When you are ready to fire, remove all the tubes except the bougie. Make sure that the anesthetist has removed all the tubes, including the temperature probe. The first stapler, in my opinion, is the most important stapler. Place your stapler carefully. Take your time. Don't be in a rush to just fire and finish the sleeve in 10 minutes. There's nothing gained by doing that. Don't be too tight against the bougie. It's always said, don't be aggressive. You're not going to cause more weight loss by going very tight against the bougie. Stay to the left of Belsey fat pad unless it's very big, and then dissect it. But try to avoid dissection if it is just a normal fat pad. Ensure good hemostasis. Raise the blood pressure to at least 140 systolic. Spend time on hemostasis. It may mean another 10 minutes. In my own experience, some of the sleeves ooze so much that you may need, almost like 20 clips. We use 200 millimeter clips, and occasionally an overswing of the staple line to prevent bleeding. Always do a leak test. You will not regret it. And close the extraction port. Overall, be gentle at all times. Sleeve is a nice operation. There are a lot of nuances to it. But if you're rough, try to be too fast, try to be too aggressive, you will land into problems. Thank you very much for your patient attention. Thank you. Thank you. What happened? Hello.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sandeep. That was an excellent presentation, and all the tips and tricks that you have shared with everybody for the sleeve gastrectomy. Yes, Praveen, you can take over.
Hello?
Yeah, Praveen, you can take over. Yes.
Yeah, there was some signal issues. So,
No problem.
Dr. Sandeep, I think, thank you for that wonderful presentation. I think I would request the audience, if you have any questions, please do post in the chat box, so we'll be able to take maybe one question to Dr. Sandeep. What will your advice be, young surgeons out here? At what level of their laparoscopic experience do you think somebody should be starting a sleeve gastrectomy?
I would say, like, as I said, you should have enough experience in the upper GI bariatric surgery. I think if you have that, you can start, because that's what surgery involves. I think it involves good knowledge of the anatomy of the G junction area. Rest of the stapling and all is not a big deal. But I think the most important nuances of the sleeve lies and the region around the G junction. And one of the important part is be to able to repair a hiatal hernia if it is there, and which is there in our experience, in about 20 to 25% of cases. So I would say if you're doing enough upper GI bariatric, you can start it. Otherwise, you go through that process and do that. So it's not a very complex operation. It's not an easy operation. And I'm really actually more comfortable with doing a bypass than a sleeve. I mean, honestly, sleeve can be uncomfortable sometimes.
Yeah, so that was what I was supposed to ask for. Good thing.
So do you suggest, Dr. Sandeep, that somebody start off with a bypass than a sleeve? It's not, surely not.
No, I wouldn't say that. I would say, okay,
Yeah.
start with the sleeve, but
Yeah.
must learn all the operations. I have excellent videos where we had to convert one into the other. I mean,
Right.
into bypass or a bypass into OAGB, OAGB into RYGB. So you must learn all the operations. Don't be a sleeve surgeon only.
Operator, yeah.
Yeah, in fact, the team is very, very important. The dedicated team to manage these patients. It is not only doing sleeve gastrectomy that is sufficient to complete the procedure. It is actually the team which will take care of the outcome. So it is not occasionally doing sleeve gastrectomy will not work. We should have a dedicated program of bariatric program so that we can have a good outcome.
Agreed. Completely
And
agree.
I think we should know
Absolutely.
it is gastrectomy should can encounter anything during surgery. We should be ready to prepare ourselves to tackle with the problem.
I mean, it's a more of a team effort of the nutritionist, the anesthetist, endocrinologist, everybody working in a team, in fact, gives the best outcome to the patient. Okay. So Praveen, should we move on to the second presentation?
Praveen is frozen.
Yeah, Praveen is frozen. Anyway, so you can start. You can start your presentation. Yes.
Quickly get the charger.
Okay.
Yeah, you are sharing now. Yes.
Sorry, I just lost my connection. I have to come on.
No issue. I compensated your absence that time. I requested Dr. Narwaria to present his presentation. Yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
So my talk is on Roux-en-Y gastric bypass. So I don't have any disclosure. And this is my case mix. Most of time, my procedures are mainly mini gastric bypass or long pouch gastric bypass, we call it MGB, and 10% is about Roux-en-Y gastric bypass. Few metabolic surgery like ileal interposition and duodenal switch, which I do, and sleeve gastrectomy is less than 5%. Maybe recently, I don't even remember when I did my last sleeve. We do get a lot of revision surgeries which are being done from different part of the country coming to us. And why Roux-en-Y is considered as gold standard? Because it is a procedure which is being done since more than 50 years. And earlier it was 80% of bariatric procedures in America were Roux-en-Y gastric bypass. Now I think the sleeve numbers has increased in the US, but in India I think still sleeve numbers are not increasing so much, but I think MGB is going very, very fast in our country. So Roux-en-Y gastric bypass has essentially two components. One is gastric component, wherein we have variation of pouch size, and we have bypass segment of alimentary limb, which is bypassing the proximal, so duodenum and proximal jejunum. So in gastric pouch, we reduce the stomach pouch capacity from 25 to 35 cc, and if it is OAGB or MGB, it is about 150 to 200 cc, and long pouch again has a good capacity about 150 cc. So the bypass segment of small intestine, which include the duodenum and proximal jejunum, the length of this BP limb, which is variable from 50 centimeter to 200 to 250 centimeter. So there are a lot of modifications which have occurred in last few years, depend on different experiences. In Roux-en-Y, the pouch formation is about 15 to 30 cc. We transect it using the staplers, and many times people use reinforcement, but I don't use personally. And The RULIM is created again after identify the DJ flexor. We calculate about 175 to 100 centimeter of the RULIM, and then we do the anastomosis. Majority of time it is anticolic, antigastric, but very rarely when there are super obese people, sometimes we do it retrocolic, retrogastric to reach the pouch. And it is always a surgeon's preference most of time. In anticolic, it may lead to high tension in super obese people of more than 60 BMI. Sometimes you cannot reach. It can cause traction on the anastomosis. It can have a leak because of that. And sometimes it is very difficult to do the anastomosis. Gastrogenostomy can be done by circular stapler, but my preference is to use linear staplers. And I do even endotomy closure using the Hanson sutures. Drain may or may not be used. I don't use nowadays, but in earlier years of my life, I used to do to put a drain in my first 100 cases. And contrast study, on-table leak test, and post-operative contrast study is a routine even today to all my patients who underwent this surgery. So how does gastric bypass work? There is a restrictive component of the stomach pouch, and there is a malabsorptive component because of the bypass intestine. So restrictive component helps in reducing the food intake, and malabsorptive component helps in reducing the absorption. The results of gastric bypass varies from the type of surgery and individual component of malabsorption. Generally, Roux-en-Y gastric bypass is more restrictive than MGB and OAGB, whereas OAGB MGB is more of malabsorptive compared to Roux-en-Y gastric bypass. Roux-en-Y gastric bypass works on principle of more restriction than MGB by virtue of a smaller size of pouch and narrow anastomosis, which is about 2.5 centimeter of gastrojejunal anastomosis, and with initial malabsorption, but on later phase there is no malabsorption Roux-en-Y gastric bypass. OAGB works less. In OAGB, there is a less food restriction. There is a wide anastomosis, about 4 to 5 centimeter wide anastomosis with a good component of malabsorption. So, what makes the Roux-en-Y gastric bypass gold standard? Mainly because of standardized procedure, it has long-term outcomes which are published, known to us of more than 50 years. Good patient acceptability and good comorbidity resolution after Roux-en-Y gastric bypass. And these are the few outcomes comparing the gastric band, sleeve gastrectomy, Roux-en-Y gastric bypass on different comorbidity like diabetes, hypertension, dyslipidemia. You can see the Roux-en-Y gastric bypass has a better outcome compared to other procedures. This is comparison of sleeve gastrectomy with Roux-en-Y gastric bypass, again having on different comorbidities, the resolution of diabetes, hypertension, reflux disease, and OSA are much more in Roux-en-Y gastric bypass compared to sleeve. So what is the problem with Roux-en-Y gastric bypass? One is the longer learning curve. There are chances of internal hernia in spite of closure of mesenteric defect, which is ranging in tune of about 2%. And there is chances of weight regain on the long term, which is we are facing nowadays. The Roux-en-Y patients are coming back with weight regain. This is another study with having the outcome at 24 months of follow-up of gastric bypass compared to sleeve gastrectomy, gastric band. And if you look at, there are slightly higher complication rate compared to sleeve in Roux-en-Y bypass group on a 3-year follow-up. So what makes a surgery safe? There should be low postoperative mortality, compliance of patient to adhere the diet, and less nutritional consequences. A trained surgeon, particularly we have nowadays specialty centers available throughout the country wherein metabolic and bariatric surgery being done at those centers, which are having high volume surgeries with a better outcome. And every setup should be equipped with a good OR, with good energy sources and best available staplers with them. In my technique, I just need to explain you we use a Palmer's point. I'll just show you the picture diagram here, wherein we use the Palmer's point as a 5mm optical trocar through which we enter the abdomen, and after that we create pneumoperitoneum, and the rest of ports are placed under direct vision. This is another 5 mm, the right subcostal. This is my working port. I always keep patient supine. I'm standing on the right side of the patient. This is umbilical or supraumbilical incision depending on the length and BMI of the patient, and sometimes I use one extra port here as a working port, so assistant can use these two ports, and I'm using these two ports, and this is the camera port. And in Roux-en-Y, sometimes we use Nathanson to retract the lever. So these are the ports which I use, and we always do G-junction dissection first. Whenever pneumoperitoneum is created and camera is introduced, I do a diagnostic lab kind of thing. We assess the liver and infrahepatic area so that we get a good space to do an anastomosis there. I always divide the omentum in two parts. That is usually exercise I give to my residents, because the fellows who are under training, they do this exercise before even I join them. We identify DJ flexor, and then we mark at the jejunal site, so about 75 to 100 centimeter. Nowadays, I usually do 100 centimeter minimum. So I just take you through a video of my technique. This is a 36-year female with BMI of 36 with depression. Usually in depression, I don't do a sleeve gastrectomy because they can have more weight regain. This is a paraesophageal hernia, small defect there. So these kind of things you can diagnose when we are doing a diagnostic test. So I always do the G-junction dissection first, and we can see the small defect there. Then we dissect the G-junction here. This is dividing the omentum. DJ flexor is identified. We measure 100 centimeter of the jejunum. You can have marker on the instruments, or it is just an arbitrary, because of the experience we can always. And I put a marker here just to avoid Roux-en-Y anastomosis. So the distal limb is sutured with a small corrugated drain, and this is jejunal anastomosis, which is created after measuring another 100 to 125 centimeter of the jejunum. This is jejunal anastomosis which is created, and then we close the mesenteric defect here to avoid internal herniation. Again, personally I use endostitch for my suturing technique, and this is a mesenteric defect which is closed. And then we calculate it again from there, go to the Roux limb and corrugated drain, and this is creation of the pouch. So this is the avascular area which is entered. This is, you can see the left gastric vessel here, and we should remain below it to create a pouch. So after the first vessel is out from this left gastric, we should start dissecting. And this is a pouch which is created on the buzi. So it is a small pouch, about 25 to 35 cc. This is enterotomy on the jejunal side. And this is closure of the enterotomy using staple. So staple on staple technique, which nowadays I use quite frequently, but early days I used to do only suture technique. And this is reinforcing suture, which is being again taken seromuscular layer on this. We have one more surgery. I hope we have time.
Absolutely, no problem.
Hello.
Yeah, absolutely, no problem.
Hello.
Yes, you can go ahead.
Why everybody is frozen here?
No, am I not audible?
Hello.
Hello?
Yeah, you are audible.
Yeah, I think network issues on his side.
Hello.
Hello?
Dr. Manas is talking.
Hello?
Have to stop sharing. Maybe you to stop sharing your screen, Mahendra.
Hello.
Yeah, Dr. Mahendra, we are able to hear you. Hello? I think he has network issues.
Hello, Dr. Narvaria, are you able to hear us?
Achha, okay.
Hello?
Hello. Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry, yes.
You are lost in between, I think.
Sorry. So this is another. I think I muted the speaker that time. So dissecting the G junction using a Goldfinger. This is the first step which I do in Roux-en-Y gastric bypass. I put a gauze piece there so that whatever oozing there due to blunt dissection is taken care of by this. This is dividing the omentum into two parts, splitting it completely so that there is no tension on the roux limb.
Video is not coming.
Huh?
Video is not available.
You're not able to see it?
Yeah.
No, sir, we are able to see it. Please go. Requesting others to please mute your mics, please.
So this is a DJ flexor which is identified, measuring the roux limb. And then dividing this at about 100 centimeter from the DJ flexor. So care is taken here that it should not be very oblique. Sometimes we can have ischemia of this part of it, a part of the roux limb, and we need to do excision of it. So it should be perpendicular to it, and we should increase this length on mesentery as much as comfortably we can do it. So I use harmonic and then Ensil to, and you can see that this is always going like this. You can always see a groove like this through which you always divide it so that you can increase this length of mesentery, and you can easily take. You can always check whether it is going properly to the G junction, and if needed, we can always extend it. This is a suture coated piece which is sutured at the roux limb just to identify proximal and distal, and then we do the jejunal anastomosis the way you already shown here, and this is just completion, and then this is creating the pouch, taking a seromuscular layer. This is my technique wherein I always take a seromuscular layer there. So this is a posterior layer, and then we have the anastomosis, and then so this is a more secure anastomosis. So far, I don't have a single leak with this technique. So that is what I'm doing since so many years now. And this anastomosis about 2.5 centimeter. And then we close this enterotomy using sutures. So this is enterotomy closure. And I always start this closure from inside the lumen. So because the angles are the most weak area, so it is always better to start from inside and then come out. So we can have a secured anastomosis here. And I start from other angle and then come in between the two. So you started on this angle and came to middle, then started from other angle and then again coming back to middle, so that your angles are secured and you have a secured closure. And one more layer of suturing on this. Then we can do the leak test. And recently I started using long pouch Roux-en-Y gastric bypass, wherein I do anastomosis pouch just like MGB, and then we divide this limb here and joining this here to create a Roux-en-Y gastric bypass with a long pouch. So this is another procedure which is being used at my center, and this is how it looks. Thank you so much, and we can take questions.
Thank you, Dr. Narwari. I think that was a wonderful presentation. Just one question before I take other questions. How do you evaluate this? Okay. Why is that? I mean, in the beginning, I think you mentioned you moved on completely towards mini gastric bypass and very little Roux-en-Ys and sleeves. So why is that? Because you're probably one of the most experienced persons in the country today. I mean, why is that this transition?
I think weight regain was the major issue and the quality of life. The two things which I give importance practice is, one is quality of life and second is weight gain. So Roux-en-Y gastric bypass, the major problem which we faced is the protein intake, which is not enough. People don't, because of the small size of meal, they don't take protein and they lose their muscle mass. This is what is my observation. So in MGB, the pouch size is bigger, the length of small bowel, which is significant. So with a good amount of food, they can at least consume some size of protein, and the muscle loss is much lesser compared to Roux-en-Y gastric bypass, which I have documented even by doing a body composition analysis and all. And that is how I changed it. So, and I always do 150 centimeter. I don't go beyond 150 centimeter of the loop. So I think that is not adding so much of malabsorption that should cause problem. And I don't see any, in last so many years, I don't even see a marginal ulcer or bile reflux, which is causing problem to these patients.
Okay. There's one question from Dr. Shujan Shrestha. How will you evaluate the distal excluded stomach if needed?
We do endoscopy preoperatively and postoperative. If you want to evaluate, we have we do a CT scan, and we can always do laparoscopy if there is a problem. Like we had one person who had Dilfu lesion and who had bleeding, so we had to do laparoscopy guided endoscopy to identify the lesion and then treat it. But yes, for I think every bypass that is the challenge. So it is always better to do a pre-operative endoscopy to check the distal bypass segment and then do the bypass.
Dr. Sahu, you have any questions? I think you're muted. You're muted.
I think how the first question that Praveen asked, the thinking of switching over from sleeve to bypass. You told that last sleeve when you had done, probably you don't remember. I mean,
Yes, doing sleeve except the pediatric patients.
okay,
Otherwise, I don't do it.
okay.
Post 60 years of age, I prefer to do mini gastric bypass.
So if it's not a sleeve, then a mini gastric bypass is the thing that you prefer more. Okay, fine. Okay.
I have not seen many people came back to me with weight regain compared to Roux-en-Y and sleeve gastrectomy. So that is the major
So
concern.
the weight regain is quite significant in a sleeve. That's the reason probably which compelled you to switch over to bypass. Okay, fine. So I think then Praveen, we can take over mini gastric bypass. You can start. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Dr. Narwari has just given me a right passage to start the mini gastric bypass.
Yeah.
I think he being a proponent for a mini gastric bypass. I think you will be seeing my screen now.
Yeah.
So, although I think on a different note, probably Dr. Narwari should have spoken on the mini gastric bypass, because in my practice, I think mini gastric bypass is less than 10%. Although I do, but very selective. Probably sleeves and Roux-en-Y is a much more. Of course, there has been completely different practices over the countries around the world for various reasons, dietary patterns, ethnic factors, and at the end of the day, we need to justify what we are doing to our patients when they have a question. So I will be sticking mainly to the technique aspect. Mini gastric bypass is probably one of the very popular bariatric surgery procedures at this point in our country and in many parts of the world too. So as we all know that there are two components of a bariatric surgery, one being restrictive. I think a sleeve gastrectomy, although anatomically restrictive, there is some malabsorption. A Roux-en-Y gastric bypass, which Dr. Narwari just presented, is again more restrictive with some malabsorptive component, because you do a very small pouch, you do a very small stoma. However, mini gastric bypass, the amount of restriction is lesser. You have a wider and a longer pouch, so the patients can actually eat well, but you compensate that restriction by causing a malabsorption. So we should not try to increase restriction, increase malabsorption. That's when we tend to have trouble, where patients can have malabsorptive symptoms or malabsorptive issues. So mini gastric bypass is basically a slightly modified version of the Roux-en-Ys, wherein instead of a small pouch, you have a long vertical tube, more like a sleeve gastrectomy, because as we will see in the technique, we will start the firing from the level of the antrum. And instead of a Roux-en-Y configuration, we will be having a loop configuration. The limb lengths vary between 150 to 200 centimeters. As Dr. Narwari has said, he stays within 150 centimeters for safety, although there are certain centers who go even more than 200 centimeters. With regard to the position of the ports, I think it's similar to what you have seen. However, it will be supine, reverse Trendelenburg with a surgeon between the legs of the patient. The camera port will be supraumbilical and to the left. So at this orientation is where you will see the camera coming in. You will be seeing in the video. Then the subsequent port will be guided under vision. On the left mid-clavicular line, approximately oriented towards the greater curvature, opposite to the level of the incisura, which will be a 5 mm. The third port will be at 12 mm, again under vision, towards the right side of the abdomen, oriented towards the antrum. So it will be inferior to the level of the antrum, but somewhere
I think Parveen is frozen.
Yeah, again frozen. Yeah, I will come back. You will come
You
back.
have a PIP.
Yeah, please. Yeah. I think Praveen, you can
Sorry,
start from the beginning. You are lost for a minute. Yeah,
Is it?
yeah. You are frozen for
Oh,
more than a
okay.
minute.
Oh, okay.
I think you
I'll go.
start with the beginning of the video.
Yeah, beginning of the video only. Yeah.
Okay. So I was just mentioning the first port will be supraumbilical and to the left side of the abdomen. The second port will be oriented towards the greater curvature of the stomach, opposite to the level of the incisura. The third will be at 12 mm, which is inferior to the antrum, wherein the entire the vertical firing will be done. The fourth port will be the counter traction port in the anterior axillary line. And of course, the fifth port, the liver retraction port, which will also be a 12 mm port.
Yeah,
Is
yeah.
my
It's
audio
fine.
okay now?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is the 12 mm at the inferior to the antrum, then at 12 mm in the subxiphoid region, which will be used for liver retraction and also for the first fire. So the firing will be, yes, we will be entering into the lesser sac at the level of the incisura. We will have a vertical fire, which will be using a 12 mm from the subxiphoid region. Now the lesser omental attachments from the lesser curvature are being divided, which is at the level of the crow's foot, to gain access into the lesser sac from the lesser curvature side. Stay closer to the stomach. This is similar to what you saw on the Roux-en-Y gastric bypass. However, the Roux-en-Y gastric bypass, it will be much higher. Here, our aim is to create a vertically long oriented tube starting from the antrum. So this first fire will be from the subxiphoid 12 mm port. Make sure all Ryle's tubes and all tubes are removed. A vertical firing is done perpendicular to the incisura, about 4 to 5 centimeters. Also, you need to make sure you don't completely transect the stomach. Then the bottom fire, you need to fire it like a V, what we call the cobra head kind of a configuration, because that is where the GJ will come. So it is like a V kind of an anastomose. So you need to have a wider base. Then at this point, the bougie is introduced, and the steps are similar to what you see in a sleeve gastrectomy. Using the 12 mm, which is at the inferior to the antrum, we do serial firing of vertical staplers. However, in a sleeve gastrectomy, you are quite close onto the bougie or very restrictive, but in a mini gastric bypass, you tend not to be very close to the bougie, stay about 0.5 to 1 centimeter away. Now the fundus is now retracted or divided. The phrenoesophageal attachment between the fundus and the left crus are being divided. Now the posterior fundal attachments also needs to be released. So the posterior gastric attachments are now being released. The vessel that you see at this point is the posterior gastric vessels, which is usually, if it is lateral, it is from the splenic artery. Sometimes they're very medial when it comes from the left gastric artery. We recently published this finding and the studies in the obesity surgery journal. So if it is very medial, you might have to divide. Unlike in this case, you tend to lateralize it. Remove all the posterior gastric attachments so that the left crus view. Now the staplers are being fired again. Need to make sure. Is my audio okay?
Yeah,
You are having little bit of echo.
disturbances, yes. Disturbances, yes. Frozen man. Frozen man.
Hello?
Yeah, you are.
Sorry, I think I lost my signal again.
Yeah.
Yeah, the posterior attachment now be released. Sir, is it okay now?
Yeah, it's okay.
The video.
So once the left crus attachments are being released,
We are not able to see.
continue the linear fires towards the left crus.
No video.
Now video is coming this side. I am able to see the video.
Sorry, sir.
It's okay. I am seeing the video. Probably Dr. Narwaria's. I mean, others are seeing, or I am able to see the video.
So once this is done, now the gastrotomy is being made. So this is that white cobra head that I said where the GJ will be done. Now this endotomy can be made in the anterior wall or the posterior wall. But I tend to prefer at the corner wherein we will have a good posterior wall on which the GJ can be performed. Now we move on to the infracolic compartment for identification of the DJ flexure. Once the DJ flexure is identified, we measure the biliopancreatic limb. So this can vary between 150 to 200 centimeters. In fact, we had a recent review by Dr. Kamal Mahavir from the UK where he said 180 centimeters is probably a good balance between good weight loss at the same time not causing complications. Since you have a longer pouch, usually the anastomosis is not under tension and it makes the surgery more easier, especially in super obese patients, etc. Now the enterotomy is now being made on the biliopancreatic limb. Stapler. In a Roux-en-Y gastric bypass, we tried to do a very small stoma to the size of 2 to 2.5 centimeters. But in mini gastric bypass, where the aim is not to be very restrictive, we want to encourage the patient to eat. The anastomosis usually done around 4.5 centimeters because you need to have a longer, wider, and a wider stoma. For any bleeding, needs to be checked on the anastomosis. So there's no bleeding. So we continue with the suturing. The first stay suture is taken on the right side. So the surgeon is basically between the legs of the patient. The camera surgeon is to the right side of the patient, as you can see in the PIP. Now we move on to the left side of the anastomosis. The aim is to anastomose the stomach to the jejunum, not the stomach to the stomach. So you basically take outside in and then the inside out on the lateral corner. And the corners are the most important ones. we end the anastomosis making a knotting onto the stay suture that was taken earlier. To prevent tension on the anastomosis, we do a corner stitch between the stomach and the jejunum, which will prevent any tension or kinking on the anastomosis, which could subsequently lead on to a stomal ulcer. So as you can see, it's a long pouch, wide base called the cobra head, and an anastomosis with the loop configuration. All readings, etc., have to be checked. And of course, you have any doubts of the corners, please do check on this. And a rhine will be inserted. A leak test is always done. Of course, the methylene blue is one method of doing it, or an air saline test is another method of doing it. Leak test is always checked. Of course, you normally remove the Ryle's tube at the end of the procedure. And that completes the procedure. Thank you.
Okay, that was a nice demonstration, Praveen, on MGB. In fact, we should now take up some questions. I think there are now not many questions on the chat box. Let us start with Dr. Sandeep Agarwal. In fact, how you advise the youngsters to, I mean, you answered quite a bit of that, but just somebody to start off a bariatric surgery program, how you advise somebody to start off a bariatric surgery program?
So, so there are two aspects to it. One is the training of self.
Okay.
Which obviously for which there are multiple options. Nowadays, we have full 1 year and 2 year fellowship programs available with various centers of excellence. We have a 2 year fellowship program at AIIMS, which is an academic fellowship of 2 years, where the fellow gets completely trained in all the procedures, technique-wise, as well as the research and the other aspects. Otherwise, there are short-term courses, mentorship, observerships, a lot of workshops going on. So I think the best thing is first to train yourself adequately. And the second aspect is to have the everything, for the program, to have building up a team. Build up a team of a dietitian, an endocrinologist, a bariatric physician, a coordinator, at the least these 4. And then add psychologists and other members. Obviously, you will need referral to other specialists, and I'm sure they will be available either in your own hospital or nearby centers. And the other aspect is about the equipment. I don't think one should start bariatric surgery without proper equipment, especially a good table, which can go in a steep reverse pendulum position, able to hold adequate, about at least 250 kg in all positions, have long instruments, so these are, I think, the essentials before one can start a bariatric surgery program.
Okay. So, Dr. Narwaria, what's your take on this? I mean, do you think that somebody who wants to do bariatric surgery, he should be a dedicated bariatric surgeon only? He should not be doing any other surgery? Or
not necessarily, but at least the volume should be good enough, and he should dedicate more time, because these patients, they need more time. See, when I was very busy GI surgeon, I was not able to dedicate myself for bariatric patient. And I was feeling that I'm not doing a great justice to this patient. So I stopped my GI practice and started bariatric. So I think I could increase my numbers because of dedication towards bariatric surgery. I still do GI surgeries, but the numbers are comparatively much less than
quite less. Okay. So I mean, your focus has now shifted, almost stopping on the GI side and switching over to the bariatric side. And Praveen, you agree on this also? I mean, you have any different opinion on this?
I would say, as a bariatric surgeon, we should be ready to dedicate significant portion of your time in bariatric surgery practice, because it's just not about the surgical procedure, but the follow-ups, the outcomes. It's something much more important than the actual surgery by itself. So I think, as Dr. Narwaria, who moved on significantly from GI towards bariatric, I think if somebody is really keen in bariatric, they should spend significant part of the time in bariatric surgery.
So, Dr. Sandeep, you have shifted also. You have closed down the GI practice and doing only bariatric, or you also have a mix and match? Because you're staying.
So, I think most other bariatric surgeons, I mean, 80% of my practice is bariatric surgery. And
Okay.
there's so much of volume that we hardly have operative time to do other things. Obviously, we're in a teaching institute, so we
That's
do
what,
other
yeah.
general surgical procedures. But yes, given a choice between a Whipple's and, I'll rather refer to a GI surgeon who's doing it more often.
Okay, so you will not be interested to do a Whipple's.
No, not at all.
Okay, so I mean
Not
that
at all.
way. So that way you are opting more for the bariatric, because that's what
Yes.
is a problem in staying in a teaching institution where you have got option of doing variety of GI surgery as well, because the load on the Whipple's is also quite high than on the bariatric, because bariatric once is not being very commonly, and I mean is not done, and the frequency is not more than the patient pulling will be also not that high as well, because that's also is an issue. And of course, more the numbers you do, surely the experience will surely build up. Professor Saha, you have any questions? Professor Saha, you have any questions?
Thank you very much for excellent presentation and discussion. In our country, still now, pediatric surgery is not popular. But we are very much interested to start the pediatric surgery. You have asked the important question, which I am ready to ask the question, but you have already asked all these things very clearly. Thank you very much for arranging such arrangement. Thank you very much.
Okay, okay. So, do we have any other question? From the floor?
I think one question is thing. If I used to do the laparoscopic surgery and advanced laparoscopic surgery for the last 25 years, but I am very much interested now to start the pediatric surgery. Our expert already explained the able facility, teamwork, and instrument facility should be available. All things I will be arranged. But what should be the most important thing I should take care to start the pediatric surgery, please?
I think it's to come to a good center for about 2 weeks, because you have already not laparoscopy for so many years. For you pick up would be good for Dr. Narwar. Observe the surgery for about 2 weeks. Then when you are one of us, and that would be the best way to go at your level.
In fact,
Thank you very much.
you should come with your complete team. That is the done from the team. Recently,
There's a bit of echo. I think need to mute our mics.
So there is
Please.
others.
Yes, please. Continue.
I was asking.
No, a lot of echo.
Put the boozy. He was putting boozy.
I think Dr. Sandeep and Dr. Ravi, could you mute your mic so that yeah.
So recently, some putting a boozy. I asked put a boozy. He not see boozy, and he said fire gone to the pelvis. And he has through the pouch. But can cause problem in to train these people and the reason.
Okay. Dr. Sandeep, take on suturing the staple line. I mean, in a tri-step, you don't do it. You are not using tri-step. Though they're using other staplers. What's your take on that?
So we do not over the step of the step. We started we used to oversee all our scheme. But what we realized was helping patients who have a lot of meetings because of their team. And I don't think it affects the leak rate, although obviously the jury is still out of that. But our practice is just to rely on stapling. And I think the suturing just increases the operated time, increases the bleeding sometimes because you prick the vessels on the anterior part of the sleeve, and does cause more incidence of early nausea and vomiting. So we have given up on, except for revision surgery where we suture just for the sake of, again, the evidence is low, but revision surgeries, generally we do that. Otherwise.
And your preference of bougie size is 36?
38 French. That's a gastric calibration tube used by every.
Gastric calibration tube. Yeah. Okay.
Except Dr. Narwari, who uses endoscope, I think. You're muted.
You are muted.
I said I don't use endoscope now because earlier I used to use endoscope, which was too tighter sleeve, and I had 4 leaks. And after I stopped using it, I'm using bougie now. And those days I used to take sutures also to cover the complete staple line by sutures, and still I had leak. But since I stopped suturing, there is no leak.
Okay.
So that is a new.
And what about passing the gastric calibration tube to the duodenum and keeping it in stomach also? Many people just keep it in the antrum and go on firing the staple. I mean,
I think antrum is sufficient. Actually, the first firing is always wide enough at the antrum. We should away from the crowfoot, vessels on the stomach, and then you can take direction from there. So, but Sandeep has shown good placement into dude. Maybe first firing we can use it, but after first or second firing, one should take it out into the antrum so that your sleeve becomes straight.
Straight. Okay. Right.
So the bougie, which can cause little longer sleeve.
Okay. And with every firing of the stapler, the movement of the bougie need to be done and checked so that the tightness of the sleeve.
Experience.
It doesn't require. You don't require that. But somebody who is starting off, I think that's not a bad idea of doing that.
Yeah, they can do it.
Yeah. Okay. Naveen, any other message from your side on the NGB?
No, I think
one who is starting off a sleeve and should the next move, should he go the NGB or should he go for the bypass?
I would personally suggest Roux-en-Y gastric bypass because whenever sleeve goes wrong, let's say DRD, or whenever there is a leak, or whenever there has been stricture, and all these conditions, I think Roux-en-Y gastric bypass is a savior that is going to help the complications of a sleeve. So I think somebody must, at the end of the day, technically mini gastric bypass is more easier than a Roux-en-Y. But I think for these conditions, Roux-en-Y would be the right approach. So, and also at the end of the day, mini gastric bypass requires a very strong multidisciplinary team for the post-operative management. So I think the team needs to mature enough well before they are strong enough in managing the NGB patients. So in that regard, I would say the second operation should be Roux-en-Y. And once the team and the surgeons are very strong in doing a Roux-en-Y, probably they can start mini gastric bypass depending on the patient selection and the factors. Then of course, that is beyond the purview of this thing. But then a mini gastric bypass can be considered at that point.
Dr. Sandeep, you do something, anything you do for to preventing the torsion of the sleeve or rotation of the sleeve?
No, as I said, if you do the technique the way we do, the traction is on the greater curvature. Don't put too much of traction. Don't be too tight against the bougie. If you're too tight against the bougie, it will cause, once you withdraw the bougie, twist. I think with those precautions, we really do not need anything further. But sometimes if you feel you can take a few sutures just to tag it to the momentum, that is required in very, very few cases. I would say less than 1% cases we would do that. We really rely on what I've shown in my technique.
Okay.
In fact, your staple line should be lateral. It should not be zigzag. If you have a that of technique, then there is a problem of twisting. Otherwise, lateral staple line, there is no risk of twisting of the sleeve.
True.
Okay, right.
The lesser done in sleeve, the better. Don't overdo. The moment you start overdoing,
that will creating more problem. Okay.
Yeah.
So, is there any other questions from the floor? Anybody? Chirag, you have any questions? Chirag, good evening. You have any questions? Chirag, Yes.
If there is any methylene blue test positive or suspicion
Mhm.
on sleeve, this question is to Dr. Sandeep. So how do you deal with it?
So yes, so it depends on from where it is looking like to be positive. It's in the upper part. Normally, we would put additional sutures and retest with two tests, one with methylene blue again and with an air insufflation test. So we put a suture, we put a bit of momentum, repeat the leak test twice with two different modalities. If that is negative, it's okay. But if it is sometimes, it's a lot of bruising or a lot of trauma to the tissue which has occurred, which then it might be safer to and if it is somewhere, let's say in the proximal, it might be safer to convert into a bypass. I mean, I remember we did a case in one of the other medical colleges, a super obese patient. There was a bit of a stapler misfire, and the methylene blue was positive. So we converted into a Roux-en-Y bypass because we had the pouch above it. So I would say most of the time we can deal with suturing alone with some amount of mentopexy. But if you are doubtful of some major trauma, then convert it into a bypass.
And have you ever experienced that you have methylene blue test positive and you try to do the insufflation test and your rent increases in size?
No, that's not occurred actually. I mean, it's not occurred actually because those, the methylene blue test positive, if you've done a proper sleeve, is actually a little, you have to really observe it very carefully. Unless your staplers is misfired, most of these are really micro leaks to say, right, on the table. So it doesn't happen that way. And the moment we see that, we just, do what is necessary. And some very good videos, but the lack of, obviously, this was not the forum to discuss that.
So, Dr. Mahendra, you also do leak test in every case?
No, I don't do leak tests in any of them. I never done leak tests in sleeve gastrectomy.
All bypass you always do leak test.
Maybe I don't do, but yes, Roux-en-Y I used to do it, but now I don't do it. I don't have a single leak in MGB and Roux-en-Y, so I stopped doing it.
And do you do dye test after a few days?
Yeah, day one, yes, every person has to go through gastrographin study. That's routine. I think that is because of my fellows also, they have to learn how to do it and how to read it. So it is just a mandatory.
So you do fluoroscopy or you take sections of CT scan?
With fluoroscopy, yes.
Okay, fine.
Okay. Okay, so it was a fantastic deliberation by Dr. Mahendra Narwaria, Dr. Sandeep Agrawal, and Dr. Praveen Raj. Thank you very much, all three of you, for sparing your time. And thank you, everybody, for joining. So next week, again, we'll meet Dr. Chirag Desai with tips and tricks of liver resection. So Chirag will be meeting next time. So
Yes.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Praveen. Thank you, Dr.
Thank you.
Mahendra, and thank you, Dr. Sandeep Agrawal. Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Thank
Sandeep.
Thank you.
Everyone who attended.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye. Good night. Stay safe. Take care.
You too. Bye.
ଚାଳିଶ ଗଲା ଥର 140 ଏଥର ଖାଲି 40